They're trying to block ProtonMail in India. Google is adding age verification to the Wallet app, actually in a very interesting, not possibly worst way. We will see. New risks to Apple's IoT devices, a new metasearch engine, and more. Welcome to Surveillance Report 224. We're here to give you the privacy and security news of the week. Oh, and I'm Henry from Techlore.
I'm Nathan from The New Oil.
Right before we get into the highlight story, which is ProtonMail possibly being banned in India, I want to quickly talk about our sponsor, EasyOptOuts. So we've talked about data removal services for a long time and how we both use them because it's much easier than going the manual route. And we do love the manual route if you have the time and the energy to do it and maintain it. But we also do like some of these services, particularly EasyOptOuts. You might have heard of other services, but the reason why EasyOptOuts is just flat out better is that they're affordable. It's only $20 a year. Cancellation is easy, so they don't lock you into anything long term. They've also been proven to be effective. A lot of these services are not actually effective, and we saw some research come out of Consumer Reports that showed this was the case. But EasyOptOuts actually fared as one of the best ones from Consumer Reports as well as privacy guides, and they just ask for minimal information. And they don't just send out your information to every provider out there and all these data services. What they do is they check first if your information is there, and then they only send it if they have that information. There are only 2 employees, there's no third-party contractors, and this really is, in my view, kind of the best possible option we even have right now if you want to use an automated service. Both Nate and myself use EasyOptOuts, and it's super affordable, it's been super smooth, and I don't have much to say because it kind of just works. So also, if you run any businesses, they do have business plans so you can set it up for any of your employees. Check them out in the description. Thank you, EasyOptOuts, for sponsoring this podcast. And now to the highlight story, beginning with Indian court orders blocking of ProtonMail. On Tuesday, a high court directed the Indian government to block ProtonMail following a legal complaint filed by the New Delhi? How's
Delhi, yeah.
No, okay. Complaint filed by the New Delhi-based Moser Design Associates. The local firm alleged that its employees had received emails containing obscene and vulgar content sent via ProtonMail. In its complaint filed in January, the New Delhi-based firm called for the regulation or blocking of ProtonMail in India as the email service reportedly refused to share details about the sender of the allegedly offensive emails despite a police complaint. Additional Solicitor General Aravind Kamath, representing the Indian government, had earlier told the High Court that the government might have a limited role in addressing the petitioner's concerns and suggested criminal courts could seek the required information from Swiss authorities since the petitioner had made a complaint. The block of ProtonMail has yet to take effect based on TechCrunch's checks of ProtonMail's website in India. So this has kind of been teased before, and it's not new in India. And to kind of quote the article here, this is the latest legal tussle facing Proton in India, its second ruling in as many years aimed at blocking the encrypted email service from operating in the country. Last year, the police department of the southern state of Tamil Nadu had sought to block ProtonMail after the email service was found to have been used for sending hoax bomb threats to local schools. The Indian government's IT ministry reportedly notified internet providers to block ProtonMail at the request of law enforcement, but Swiss federal authorities intervened to prevent the blocking of ProtonMail taking effect. And they said, quote, blocking access to ProtonMail simply prevents law-abiding citizens from communicating securely and does not prevent cybercriminals from sending threats with another email service, especially if the perpetrators are located outside of India, is what Proton said. Definitely not looking good in India right now. I question, I don't want people to be complacent, so I'm not saying people shouldn't do anything. I just do have doubts they're going to be able to get away with this super cleanly. But that doesn't mean that this isn't an alarming story that people should be following very closely. The kind of precedent that something like this would set is really jeopardizing the future of encrypted tools. And this is why we talk about when jurisdiction matters. And people say laws don't matter. It doesn't matter if you believe in a smaller government with less rights, that's fine. But we can't act like laws don't matter, because at the end of the day, most countries have laws, they have rules, and a lot of these entities have to abide by those rules. And so when we have nations and countries that don't treat encryption and privacy as human rights, this kind of stuff can happen where they can just go, well, fine, we're just going to block Proton because it's inconveniencing some people in government right now. And that's the only solution we want to deal with that's short term and doesn't think about consequences for regular people. So very disappointing story. And we've been really seeing a lot of negative news out of India for a while now in the privacy space for the last few years. So I hope that things change around there for a while, because they've been trying to do some pretty crazy things there.
First, on a lighter note, I want to note that the reason I laughed earlier is because twice I have screwed up things about India. Once is I pronounced Delhi as Delhi, which that one's on me because I know better than to do that. And the other one was actually that state, Tamil Nadu. We covered that story a couple years ago and I misunderstood it. And I thought that was a person. I really appreciate our Indian listeners because you were very kind both times. Like, you definitely laughed at me, but also you were like, nah, bro, that's not right. And I appreciate the kindness. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. This is a really good example of the slippery slope. And this is the hard thing about life is sometimes that's just a logical fallacy, right? Sometimes it's like you're making a mountain out of a molehill. That's really not that big a deal. You need to calm down. But other times it definitely is a trend in the wrong direction. And I think these are the kinds of things that even if theoretically, even if they only blocked ProtonMail and it wasn't a slippery slope, that's still not good. That's still restricting people. And like Proton said, it's restricting access to their tools. And there are other great email providers out there like Tuda, but it's still just not great to be restricting the tools that people can use like that. Especially to me, that is such a ridiculous argument. Like, oh, they sent us a mean email. So what, you never get any from Gmail? Like, what's the Gmail equivalent of India? Is it Gmail? Like, you never get any from Gmail. You never get any from Yahoo. You never get anybody from anything else. Like, get over it. And granted, I don't know what was in the email. Maybe it was particularly vile, but also, and I'm not trying to say it's okay, but like, welcome to the internet. There's a lot of particularly terrible people. There's no barrier to entry. So I don't know. That's just, to me, it's just such a ridiculous hill to die on. And I really hope that they do not literally, but figuratively die on that hill and get shamed into never coming to court ever again, because that's just completely ridiculous. But I think at this time, it's important to remember censorship resistance tools. You know, there's Tor. I know a lot of VPNs have had to pull out of India because of their law a few years ago cracking down on VPNs. I think Proton was actually one of the services, I think, who said that they were going to do a workaround where, and I'm grossly oversimplifying here, so I apologize, but they're basically going to put servers near India, close enough where they pull an Indian IP address, but they're not actually in India. So basically you get all the benefits of having a VPN in India, but none of the legal drawbacks. Things like Tor, things like reputable VPNs, any other censorship resistance tools. I think this is where things that we don't usually talk about, like I2P or LokiNet, would potentially have a role to play there. For the record, I haven't played around with any of those, so I don't know how good they are at censorship resistance, but just a thought. Not cool. We're going to be keeping an eye on this. Just make sure that you have a plan for when things like these happen, whether your plan is to migrate away from Proton. That is one option if that's what it takes, or alternately, whether you're going to have a plan to access it. These are, unfortunately, the times we are living in.
Yeah, I also just, I don't know how this would be effective. Like Proton, Signal, even, these services have built-in censorship-resistant features. Like Proton has, and this is actually, you know, some people have, you know, posted on Reddit. They're like, oh my gosh, my iOS settings told me that Proton pings Google, haha. Like, and it's like, well, actually, that's the feature, that's the censorship resistant feature. So it actually tries to impersonate Google, essentially, kind of like what Tor does with their bridges. I don't know if that's still how it functions, but that's at least how it used to function. So my point is, these services actually have built-in censorship resistance for situations like this. So I don't know if they would be effective in this exact situation. I don't know how the blocking would take effect, but as far as I know, they are pretty effective for people where Proton is blocked. And even if it's not, then like Nate said, you have those tools like Tor and I2P, and it's pretty pointless is my point. Like, all of this is just, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of that whole argument of like, if you make something illegal, only the criminals are going to use it. And because we kind of mentioned this, I think a couple weeks ago on the other side of the argument is I think we were talking about Meta and WhatsApp rolling out like a new privacy feature. And it's like, most people are not going to make the effort to get around that feature. So it does actually overall benefit people. And it's the same thing with these kind of tools. Most people, I think, are not going to make the effort to get around this censorship and access Proton. So it is going to be a net loss of privacy. And exactly that. It's going to be a net loss because the only people that are going to access Proton are a handful of hardcore privacy people, a handful of criminals, which then turns it into a negative feedback loop where it's like, only criminals use Proton. Yes, because you've outlawed it. And then everybody else who's a law-abiding citizen who says, I'm not going to go through that effort, doesn't get that benefit of privacy and security because now they're stuck using, again, whatever the Indian equivalent of Gmail is, that is just terrible. It's both ways. It's like, it's not effective for the people who want to put in the effort. And for those who are not willing to put in the effort, it's just lowering their protection. So either way, it's a loss. All right, let's go into the data breaches. We're going to start off with how California sent residents' personal health data to LinkedIn. So this comes from the markup. The website that lets Californians shop for health insurance under the Affordable Care Act, coveredca.com, has been sending sensitive data to LinkedIn, forensic testing by the markup has revealed. As visitors filled out forms on the website, trackers on the same pages told LinkedIn their answers to questions about whether they were blind, pregnant, or used a high number of prescription medications. The trackers also monitored whether the visitors said they were transgender or possible victims of domestic abuse. In a statement, a spokesperson for the agency confirmed the data was sent to LinkedIn as part of an advertising campaign. Since being informed of the tracking, all active advertising-related tags across our website have been turned off out of an abundance of caution. Visitors who filled out health information on the site may have had their data tracked for more than a year. The campaign began in February of 2024. The markup found that Covered California had more than 60 trackers on its website. Out of more than 200 of the government sites, the average number of trackers on the sites was 3. While some of the data sent to LinkedIn was relatively innocuous, such as what pages were visited, Covered California also sent the company detailed information when visitors selected doctors to see if they were covered by a plan, including their specialization. The site also told LinkedIn if someone searched for a specific hospital. In addition to demographic information, including gender, the site also shared details with LinkedIn when visitors selected their ethnicity and marital status, and when they told coveredca.com how often they saw doctors for surgeries or outpatient treatment.
Next data breach. VeriSource now says February data breach impacts 4 million people. This is a Texas-based employee benefits admin and HR outsourcing solution. It took place in February, and in the sample they shared with Maine's Attorney General's office, the potentially impacted data type includes an employee's full name, address, date of birth, gender, and social security number. And it should be clarified that they made attempts previously to inform impacted people, sending letters to 55,000 people in May 2024. Wow, okay, I guess I missed that. This is from February 2024, not 2025. In May 2024, they sent letters, and then they did another 112,000 in September, but these figures are far from the total of 4 million.
Ascension discloses a new data breach after third-party hacking incidents. So Ascension, for those who don't know, is, quote, one of the largest private healthcare systems in the US. They operate 142 hospitals nationwide with over 142,000 employees and have a reported total revenue of $28.3 billion in 2023. Depending on the impacted patient, the attackers gained access to a combination of personal information, including name, address, phone numbers, email address, dates of birth, race, gender, and social security number. They could also access personal health information related to inpatient visits, including the physician's name, admission and discharge dates, diagnosis and billing codes, medical record number, and insurance company name. The total number of people impacted was not disclosed.
A dating app called Raw exposed users' location data and personal information. So this included display names, date of births, dating and sexual preferences, as well as users' locations, and some of that location data included coordinates that were specific enough to locate users down to street-level accuracy. So this launched in 2023. It's a dating app that claims to offer more genuine interactions with users, in part by asking users to upload daily selfie photos. The company does not disclose how many users it has, but its app listing on the Google Play Store notes more than 500,000 Android downloads to date. News of the security lapse comes in the same week that the startup announced a hardware extension of its dating app, which is the Raw Ring, like on your finger. And this is an unreleased wearable device that it claims will allow app users to track their partner's heart rate and other sensor data to receive AI-generated insights, ostensibly to detect infidelity. Raw claims on its website and in its privacy policy that its app and its unreleased device both use end-to-end encryption.
Our last data breach comes from Co-op, who is a UK retail giant, as the article described them, who confirms a data theft after the Dragon Force ransomware claims the attack. So the data included information relating to a significant number of current and past members, includes personal data such as names and contact details, but did not include passwords, bank or credit card details, transactions, or information relating to any members or customers' products or services with the Co-op group. I don't believe they disclosed how many people.
Companies. We're going to start with Sam Altman's eye-scanning ID project, which has launched in US with 6 locations. Well, the concept here is he wants to create a global identity verification system for people using iris scans and the blockchain to fight against fraud and bots. So the way this works is you go up to an orb, a spherical biometric device, and it spends about 30 seconds scanning your face and iris, and then it creates and stores a unique iris code for you, verifying that you're human and that you've never signed up before. Then you get some of the project's cryptocurrency, WLD, for free, and you can use your World ID as a sign-in with integrated platforms, which currently include an open API integration with Minecraft, Reddit, Telegram, Shopify, and Discord. Starting Tuesday, the company is opening 6 flagship US retail locations where people can sign up to have their eyeball scanned, which include the following locations: Austin, Atlanta, LA, Nashville, Miami, and San Francisco. At an event in San Francisco on Wednesday, the venture announced 2 high-profile partnerships. Visa will introduce the World Visa card this summer, available only to people who have had their irises scanned by World, and the online dating giant Match, who runs things like Tinder, will begin a pilot program testing out World ID and some age verification tools with Tinder in Japan. So they plan to deploy 7,500 orbs by the end of the year in the US. Now, the project does keep personal data for fraud purposes to make sure that people aren't double scanning or tricking the system, and impossible to reverse engineer, unlike typical anonymized data, which is possible to de-anonymize and identify someone with. Adrian Ludwig is a security officer at Tools for Humanity, which is a contributor to World, said that in an interview, the project splits up individual stored data among multiple parties, such as a couple of different financial institutions and some blockchain institutions. So they say so far there are 26 million people on the network across Europe, South America, and the Asia Pacific region, with 12 million verified. And it's moving slower than expected. In 2021, the project's goal was to scale to 1 billion people by 2023. So they are a long ways away from that.
Our next couple of stories come from Google. First up, we forgot to include this one last week, but this is really important, so we just wanted to mention it to you guys. Google is killing software support for early Nest thermostats. They're ending updates for the first generation Nest Learning thermostat released in 2011 and the second gen model that came out a year later. This also affects European Nest Learning thermostats from 2014. This is a quote from Google. "You will no longer be able to control them remotely from your phone or with Google Assistant, but you can still adjust the temperature and modify schedules directly on the thermostat." The cutoff date for software updates and general support for Home and Nest apps is October 25th. In other significant news, Google is flatly stating that it has no plans to release additional Nest thermostats in Europe. Quote, "Heating systems in Europe are unique and have a variety of hardware and software requirements that make it challenging to build for the diverse set of homes." The Nest Learning thermostat 3rd gen from 2015 and the Nest thermostat E from 2018 will continue to be sold in Europe while current supplies last. The article notes that early Nest Learning thermostats can at least be used locally without Wi-Fi, which isn't true of newer models. So
this one is interesting. So Google Wallet is adding support for digital IDs in more states. So the company shared that they are also, in light of this, getting a way to privately verify age, and that the app is expanding to 50 more countries. If you want to check out where it's supported, definitely check it out in the sources. And as the Real ID deadline of May 7th, 2025 approaches, Google notes that you can use an ID pass created from your US passport to pass through TSA security for domestic travel at supported airports, even if you don't have a Real ID driver's license or state-issued ID. But your ID pass isn't a replacement for your physical ID, so you should still keep that with you. Users will also soon be able to use their digital ID to recover Amazon accounts, access online health services like CVS, etc. They want this to kind of just be expanded everywhere. Now, what's the interesting part of the story is that Google says it wanted to create a verification system that not only verifies users' ages, but protects their privacy throughout the process. So to achieve this, they're integrating zero-knowledge proofs technology into Google Wallet. This is a way to essentially verify that a piece of information is legitimate. So this integration will allow Google to provide fast age verification across mobile apps and websites that use its digital credentials API. The company will use ZKP, Zero Knowledge Proof, in other Google products and partner with apps like Bumble, which will use digital IDs from Google Wallet to verify user identity and Zero Knowledge Proofs to verify age. Google will also open source its Zero Knowledge Proof technology to other wallets and online services.
Meta tightens privacy policy around Ray-Ban glasses to boost AI training. So Meta is making a few notable adjustments to the privacy policy for their Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses. In an email sent out on April 29th to owners of the glasses, the company outlined 2 key changes. First, Meta AI with camera is always enabled on your glasses unless you turn off Hey Meta, which is like their hands-free voice assistant, kind of like Hey Siri or Hey Google. That said, a spokesperson tells The Verge the photos and videos captured on Ray-Ban Meta are on your phone's camera roll and not used by Meta for training, including photos or videos captured by using the Hey Meta take a photo or video voice command. If you share those photos to a product, for example, Meta AI cloud services or third-party product, then policies of that product will apply. Second, Meta is taking after Amazon by no longer allowing Ray-Ban Meta owners to opt out of having their voice recordings stored in the cloud. Quote, "The option to disable voice recordings is no longer available, but you can delete recordings anytime in the settings," the company wrote. In its privacy notice, Meta states that voice transcripts and stored audio recordings are otherwise stored for up to 1 year to help improve Meta's products. If the company detects a voice interaction that was accidental, those recordings are deleted after a shorter 90-day window.
23andMe is requiring potential bidders. So some context here, we talked about how 23andMe was going bankrupt. They were going to sell data potentially, and people were like, oh my gosh, we're going to sell DNA data to the highest bidder. Well, now they're requiring potential bidders to affirm that they will uphold data privacy. So they are requiring that any of these bidders will guarantee to comply with the company's privacy policies and applicable law. The genetics company said this is necessary to protect customers' data. In addition, bidders will need to submit documentation of their intended use of any data, describing the privacy programs and security controls they have in place or would implement, and say whether they would ask for current privacy policies to be amended. 23andMe has also filed a motion asking for the appointment of an independent customer data representative to review whether a proposed deal is in alignment with the company's privacy policies and data privacy laws.
LG will shut down update servers for its Android smartphones on June 30th. LG announced just over 4 years ago that it would depart the smartphone business, and now the clock is running out on any remaining updates for the company's Android phones. When LG called it quits for Android, the company also committed to a few more updates. That would include an Android 12 update for select devices, the last major update the company would put out, as well as security updates for at least 3 years after each device had been released. That 3-year cutoff has long since passed for all LG devices, but any devices still floating around out there will soon no longer be able to pull updates. That's because on June 30th, LG will shut down the servers for its Android updates. After that date, LG smartphones still in use will no longer be able to get over-the-air updates from LG or through the LG Bridge application.
Last couple stories are quick, so I'm going to just rush through them. Microsoft makes new accounts passwordless by default, so this is another step towards eliminating passwords, but this means that users will never need to create a password. Instead, they're going to use things like biometrics, PINs, and security keys.
Hey everybody, Future Nate here with a quick update. So of course, the day after we recorded this, as video viewers can see, the story we quoted was a very short stub from Slashdot that didn't really link to a source. It's kind of annoying when they do that sometimes. The day after we recorded this, Ars Technica published a longer piece titled Microsoft's new passwordless by default is great, but comes at a cost. And skipping down to the part that we did not cover in the podcast because we didn't know it, it says, here's the fine print. Left out of Microsoft's announcement is that even after users create a passkey, they can't go passwordless unless they install the Microsoft Authenticator app on their phone. Microsoft has made Authy, Google Authenticator, and similar apps incompatible, a choice that needlessly inconveniences users and undermines the whole passwordless by default marketing message. Using Authenticator isn't a requirement for using a passkey, but account holders who don't have it will be unable to ditch their login passwords. With a password still associated with the account, many of the security benefits of passkeys are undermined.
And the next story is introducing AdGuard v1 for Linux. AdGuard is kind of an interesting org. They have like a DNS filtering tool, but they also have an ad blocker / tracker protection for Safari, but they're also kind of cross-platform. They also do good research. But they are now moving to Linux for some things. So now you can have access to a broad range of features and a complete flexible way to stay protected on Linux. So what they include in their V1 for Linux is app exclusions, differential filters, setup wizards, app filtering, custom rules, and proxy modes, which I'm assuming is for their DNS filtering tools. So if you're trying to block ads and block tracking and stuff like that, this could be one more thing to check out on the Linux side of things.
That'll take us into research. Law enforcement can break 77% of 3 random word passwords, which some of us may know as passphrases. Actually, real quick, let me explain that. So for anyone just joining us, real quick, a password is a bunch of random gibberish characters, ideally, right? Passphrases are when you take words or phrases instead of a password. So I'm not going to do examples, but I think I made a video years ago on the new oil. Forgive the terrible quality. It was one of my early videos, but that explains it. And I'm sure there's plenty of other videos. The gray area is if you take a bunch of random words and there's no space between them, does that count as a password or a passphrase? I don't know. I digress. Anyways, the Optimizing Password Cracking for Digital Investigations report, which was authored by Mohammed Hakim, Adam Lafranchi, and Nathan Clark from the University of Plymouth, apologies if I got any of those names wrong, along with Joachim Karvestad from Jönköping University, has confirmed that up to 77.5% of passwords created this way, the 3 random words, can be cracked using a 30% common word dictionary subset. Basically, they just found a way to make brute forcing more efficient. By using an optimized rule set that reduces computational iterations by approximately 40%, they were able to significantly improve the speed at which passwords could be recovered. The article goes on to say, if you're trying to keep your password safe, what's the most secure method? The 3 random words approach isn't all bad, and if you increase it to 4 or 5, then the passwords will become increasingly more time-consuming and difficult to crack. They also become harder to remember, which is where the use of passphrases enters the equation. Instead of random words, create a passphrase that is memorable but long, but not obvious either. Most password managers will now create these for you. If you are using a password manager, and you really should, then you can skip the passphrase and go straight for the stupidly long, random, and complex passwords instead. You don't have to remember it. That's the job of your password application. So why worry about making something memorable? Better still, use a passkey. We just talked about those. Your password manager can handle these for you as well, and they are way more secure than a lowly password.
We're going to migrate over to Reddit. And so a Redditor accidentally reinvents discarded 90s tool to escape today's age gates. So its use of credit cards to address the title.
The title doesn't directly say what the 90s tool was, and it's not really important to why I pick this story.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just kind of like, it's use of credit cards. That's what the title's talking about, but that's not important. So.
Okay. So last month, a study analyzed the relative popularity of Google search terms, found that age verification laws shift users' search behavior. It's impossible to tell if the shift represents young users attempting to circumvent the child-focused law or adult users who aren't the actual target of the laws, but overall enforcement causes nearly half of users to stop searching for popular adult sites complying with laws and instead search for non-compliant rival or virtual private network services, which are used to mask location and circumvent age checks on preferred sites. So individuals adapt primarily by moving to content providers that do not require age verification, which is what the study concluded. Now, although the Google Trends data prevented researchers from analyzing trends by particular age groups, the findings help confirm critics' fears that age verification laws may be ineffective, potentially compromise user privacy, and could drive users towards less regulated, potentially more dangerous platforms. And that's based on the study. So Goldman told Ars Technica that all of the age check methods carry the same privacy and security flaws, concluding that technology alone can't solve this age-old societal problem, and that logic-defying laws that push for them could end up dramatically reshaping the internet. And the study pointed out that search data is only part of the picture and that some users may be using VPNs and accessing adult sites through direct URLs rather than through search, and others may rely on social media to find adult content. Now, it is worth noting that VPNs remain the most popular circumvention method, and in a 2024 article in the International Journal of Law, Ethics, and Technology, they confirmed that they tend to be ignored or overlooked by statutes, despite their popularity. So while kids are ducking age gates and likely putting their sensitive data at greater risk, adult backlash may be peaking over the red wave of age-gating laws, already blocking adults from visiting popular porn sites in several states. Some states started controversially requiring checking IDs to access adult content. We've talked about this already, which prompted Pornhub owner to swiftly block access to its sites in certain states, since Pornhub instead advocates for device-based age verification, which it claims is a safer choice. Now, their campaign has seemingly won over some states that either explicitly recommend device-based age checks or allow platforms to adopt whatever age check method they deem reasonable. Other methods could include App Store-based age checks, algorithmic age estimation based on a user's web activity, face scans, or even tools that guess users' ages based on hand movements. This summer, the Supreme Court will decide whether a Texas law blocking minors' access to porn is constitutional. The decision could either stunt the momentum or strengthen the backbone of nearly 20 laws in red states across the country seeking to age-gate the internet.
iOS and Android juice jacking defenses have been trivial to bypass for years. So juice jacking is the one where basically you plug into a USB charger out in public and it's got malware, so it executes code or steals data or something like that. I remember about a year or two ago, the FBI was warning about it, but everybody was like, there's no evidence this is happening, so I'm not sure where this warning is coming from. May have been related to this or maybe not, I'm not really sure, but researchers are revealing that for years, the mitigations that phones have put in place have suffered from a fundamental defect that has made them trivial to bypass. Researchers at Graz University of Technology in Austria have recently made a discovery that completely undermines the premise behind the countermeasure. They're rooted under the assumption that USB hosts cannot inject input that autonomously approves the confirmation prompt. Given the restriction against a USB device simultaneously acting as a host and a peripheral, the premise seems sound. So there's technical details in the article, but basically these days when you plug in a USB device, it pops up and says, do you want to allow this thing to access the data on your phone? And they have found a workaround where they essentially click that button for you as soon as it plugs in, so you like never even see it, or maybe for like a split second, but now it has access to your data. That is kind of what's going on there. But again, there's technical details in there. The technique works against all but one of the 11 phone models tested, with the holdout being an Android device running the Vivo FunTouch OS, which does not fully support the USB PD protocol. The attacks against the 10 remaining models take about 25 to 30 seconds to establish a Bluetooth pairing, depending on the phone model being hacked. The attacker then has read and write access to files stored on the device for as long as it remains connected to the charger. In an email, researchers said that the fixes provided by Apple and Google successfully blunt choice jacking in iPhones, iPads, and Pixel devices. Yay, Pixels. Many Android devices made by other manufacturers, however, remain vulnerable because they have yet to update their devices to Android 15. Other Android devices, most noticeably those Samsung's running the One UI 7 software interface, do not implement the new authentication requirement even when running Android 15. The omission leaves these models vulnerable to choice jacking. The biggest threat posed by choice jacking is to Android devices that have been configured to enable USB debugging. Developers often turn on this option so they can troubleshoot problems with their apps, but many non-developers enable it so they can install apps from their computer, root their phone so they can install a different OS, transfer data between devices, and recover bricked phones. If a phone has USB debugging turned on, choice jacking can gain shell through the Android debug bridge. From there, an attacker can install apps, access the file system, and execute malicious binary files. The level of access through the Android debug mode is much higher than through picture transfer protocol and media transfer protocol, which only allow read and write access to the system files. This is the author. As I reported in 2023, these warnings are mostly scaremongering, and the advent of choice jacking does little to change that, given that there are no documented cases of such attacks in the wild. That said, people using Android devices that don't support Google's new authentication requirement may want to refrain from public charging.
Okay, and then this one comes from Apple. Millions of Apple Airplay enabled devices can be hacked via Wi-Fi. This is from a cybersecurity firm, Aligo, and they're calling this Airborne. And this pretty much is a collection of vulnerabilities affecting AirPlay. And the bugs in Apple's AirPlay software development kit for third-party devices could allow hackers to hijack gadgets like speakers, receivers, setup boxes, or smart TVs if they're on the same Wi-Fi network as the hacker's machine. So another set of airborne vulnerabilities would have allowed hackers to exploit AirPlay-enabled devices as well. And they said that these bugs have been patched in updates over the last several months, and Apple tells Wired that those bugs could have only been exploited when users changed default AirPlay settings. But the chief technology officer and co-founder estimates that potentially vulnerable third-party AirPlay-enabled devices up to tens of millions of devices. So they found that this also affects CarPlay, and they warn that this means hackers could hijack a car's automotive computer, known as its head unit, in more than 800 CarPlay-enabled car and truck models. And in those specific cases, they could only be exploited if the hacker is able to pair their own device with the head unit via Bluetooth or a USB connection, which does restrict the threat, of course. Apple products are known for regularly receiving fixes, but given how rarely some smart home devices are patched, it's likely that these wirelessly enabled footholds for malware across many of the hundreds of models of AirPlay-enabled devices will persist for years to come. Keep in mind that just because it's like Apple's proprietary AirPlay doesn't mean they're all from Apple. Like these could just be random Amazon devices from sketchy companies that are AirPlay enabled that might not get updates to include these fixes. Just some context there. So they did warn Apple about its airborne findings in the late fall and winter of last year, and Apple responded in the months since then by pushing out security updates. They collaborated with Apple to test and validate the fixes for Macs and other Apple products.
We'll move into politics now. And first up, some bad news. Congress has passed the Take It Down Act despite major flaws. So this came from EFF, and you can read more in their post, but here's the significant portions. Today, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Take It Down Act, giving the powerful a dangerous new route to manipulate platforms into removing lawful speech that they simply don't like. President Trump himself has said that he would use the law to censor his critics. The bill passed the Senate in February, and it now heads to the president's desk. Take It Down pressures platforms to actively monitor speech, including speech that is presently encrypted. The law thus presents a huge threat to security and privacy online.
TikTok was fined 530 million euros for sending European user data to China. The GDPR is what came in here. They also need to bring data processing into compliance within 6 months, and they plan to suspend all data transfers to China if the company fails to update its policies in time. And officials pointed out that the issue goes beyond the location of the servers and is also about the risk that Chinese authorities could access the data of European users under domestic laws concerning terrorism and espionage. And I'll go ahead and just finish out the politics. Milwaukee police consider a trade for 2.5 million mugshots for free facial recognition access. This is more of a signal boost for that story.
With that, we'll move into the free and open source news, and this is interesting. Windscribe has been acquitted on charges of not collecting users' data. Windscribe, a globally used privacy-first VPN, They announced that their founder has been fully acquitted in a court in Athens, Greece, following a 2-year legal battle in which he was personally charged in connection with an alleged internet offense by an unknown user of the service. The case centered around a Windscribe-owned server in Finland that was allegedly used to breach the system in Greece. Greek authorities, in cooperation with Interpol, traced the IP address to Windscribe's infrastructure and, unlike standard international procedures, proceeded to initiate criminal proceedings against the owner himself rather than pursuing information through standard corporate channels.
WaterFox is introducing private search. Now, some context, WaterFox, I believe, is owned by System 1.
They are independent again. They were bought by System 1 for a while, and they've, I think, just recently, within the last 6 months or 12 months, they're independent again.
Cool. No, that's super cool.
Yeah, good for them.
They have a browser. It's kind of like a pre-hardened, private version of Firefox. It's Firefox-based, but they're releasing a private search engine. It's a metasearch engine, and pretty much they feature no persistent user profiles, separation between advertising and search behavior, freedom from intrusive redirects and banners, and they've also included features that enhance the search experience in ways big search engines often make difficult to access, like domain block lists to filter out unwanted sites, the ability to switch between different search backends, that's coming soon, custom themes and appearance options, advanced search operators, and control over links opening in a new tab. They're doing a beta period where they're using Google as the only backend, and they're fine-tuning from there. And in future updates, they plan to add the ability to switch between different search engines according to preference. And they do not use AI to summarize content or redirect traffic away from original websites. They don't steal views from content creators by scraping their work and presenting it as AI-generated summaries. And when you search for something, they'll give you actual links to the real websites where information lives, not approximations that may be inaccurate. So they're planning 2 approaches to make WaterFox private search sustainable. One is they're building a free tier supported by privacy-friendly advertisements that don't track you. These will be contextual ads. And then eventually they want a subscription-based tier that removes all advertisements completely for those who prefer an ad-free experience.
And this last one is just another quick signal boost. The future of OSL is in jeopardy. So this is the Oregon State University Open Source Lab. They provide hosting for over 500 free and open source projects from all over the world. Over the course of its 22-year existence, the OSL has mentored over 130 students, many of whom have gone on to create their own companies and work through the larger tech ecosystem. Some notable milestones over the past years include providing hosting for Firefox in the early days, was the home of the Apache Software Foundation, Linux Foundation, Kernel.org, and Mozilla for many years, and currently provides infrastructure for projects like Drupal, Gentoo, Debian, Fedora, PHPBB, OpenID, BuildRoot/BusyBox, Inkscape, Sync, CINC, and many more.
Okay, so we only have one more story this week, and it's the Misfits, and pretty much this is a no-duh article for our regular listeners, but that doesn't mean it's not valuable. Car subscription features raise your risk of government surveillance, police records show. So, I mean, honestly, I'm just going to summarize this. So there's a ton of information here, and I'd actually recommend, if you want more resources to show people and educate them about car privacy, this is a great thing to send by them who don't already know about it. But if I read off this story, I mean, all of you have heard this stuff. I'm just going to include a quote here. A cache of more than 24 police records recently reviewed by Wired shows that U.S. law enforcement agencies regularly trained on how to take advantage of connected cars, with subscription-based features drastically increasing the amount of data that can be accessed during investigations. The records make clear that law enforcement's knowledge of the surveillance far exceeds that of the public, and reveal how corporate policies and technologies, not the law, determine driver privacy. With that said, though, that's it for the week. So again, ProtonMail, they're trying to block it in India, so keep tabs on that. And if you're in India, I would definitely suggest speaking up to politicians. Google is adding age verification to the Wallet app in an interesting way. New risks to Apple IoT devices, a new meta search engine, and more. And again, we're going to have our EasyOptOuts sponsor given to you by Nate.
Yes, so our sponsor this week is EasyOptOuts. They are very affordable at only $20 a year. Cancellation is easy. There are refunds if you're not satisfied. And just in case you, for some reason, are tuning into this one, but you missed the earlier pitch, EasyOptOuts is a data removal service. They are very effective per Consumer Reports, almost as good as doing it yourself. And Privacy Guides also did a much smaller study, but they backed that evidence up. They found very similar results. They ask for very minimal information, so you don't have to give them any information that isn't already publicly available. They're not trying to harvest all your information. They're only 2 employees, so they're not sharing your data with a ton of employees or third-party contractors. There's no ads or analytics on their platform. platform. Removal requests are not submitted unless they find your data. So again, they're not spamming all your information out to companies that may not even have it. They look it up. If you're not there, they move on. If it is, they submit a request. They focus on publicly accessible people search sites, and they are constantly adding new sites over time. And again, they do have business plans. So if you are in a business or you are in a position to influence a business and you say, hey, this would be a really inexpensive, cool perk to give to our employees, especially if you're in like a really sensitive, like contractor kind of position or one of those high target positions where, you know, you have to check in at the front desk, that would be a really cool perk to give your employees. So thank you to EasyOptOuts for sponsoring us, and definitely check them out if you haven't yet and you're looking for a removal service to at least take some of the load off of the manual side of things and catch a lot of that low-hanging fruit.
And just to finish out the episode, I just want to thank everybody for listening. Again, links to the stories are always down in the show notes. And if you want to see a story covered, we have an email there that you can contact as well. And if you want to support the podcast, sharing it is one of the best things you can do. We don't do any like advertising to try to get our podcast out there. We kind of just rely on organic reach and word of mouth. And we really appreciate anything you guys can do to help, which includes sharing the episode, making sure you're subscribed, tuning in each week, and giving a rating or giving a like, whatever you can do to just engage with us. And that's all I have. We'll see you next week, and thank you for watching.